When you think about the most foundational stories in history, there are very few that are as big, as universal as Noah's Ark.
The Great Flood. Yeah, it's the ultimate reset.
Exactly. The animals, two by two, the ark, the rainbow, it's all there.
Mm.
But today we want to zero in on a character who is so essential to that story, but is, well, almost completely forgotten.
And that's the thing. We focus so much on Noah. He's the man, the builder, the righteous one.
Right.
But for humanity to survive, it took 4 couples, 4 men and 4 women. The biblical text confirms Noah's wife was on that ark. She had to be.
Yeah.
But Genesis gives us just complete silence about who she was. She's absolutely crucial, but profoundly nameless.
And that biblical silence, that blank space in the text, that's where our deep dive begins today. Because where the original source leaves a gap, you just know that history and tradition and literature are going to rush in to fill it.
Oh, absolutely.
So our mission is to unpack the incredible, often contradictory effort across centuries to give a name and a story to the woman who literally watched the world end and then begin again. This is a story about the power of absence.
It really is. That silence in the canonical text is what birthed everything that followed. It's not just that she was unnamed. It's that this omission became a kind of narrative problem that thousands of years of scholarship felt they had to solve.
Okay, let's unpack this. And let's start with just the sheer scale of this historical obsession, because this is the fact that should really stop you in your tracks.
Yeah, when we say traditions tried to name her, it's not like there were 2 or 3 options on the table.
Not even close, right?
Not even close. This nameless woman became the subject of a centuries-long, multi-continental naming campaign. It's kind of staggering.
You're talking about that famous scholarly paper from the 40s, aren't you? The one that actually tallied them all up.
Precisely. The 1941 paper by Francis Lee Utley. Its whole purpose was to document this phenomenon. And the title of the paper says it all. The 103 Names of Noah's Wife.
Wait, say that again?
103. A single scholar documented 103 distinct variations of her name and her personality across all these different traditions.
Wow.
From early Jewish midrash to Islamic texts, it just tells you how desperately history wanted to define her.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. 103 names for a character who starts with 0. Why? Why did so many people feel this profound collective need to give her an identity?
It speaks to a really basic human need for completion in our foundational stories. The Genesis narrative gives you the skeleton, right?
The ark, the flood, the man.
The man, exactly.
Yeah.
But the traditions that come later, which are the ones we inherit, they needed to flesh out the characters. The women involved weren't just supporting cast. They were the progenitors of the entire post-flood world.
So naming her gave them a way to put their own spin on the story.
It did. It allowed these different communities to make her relevant, to align her identity with their specific theological interpretations or their anxieties.
So she becomes this vessel, and depending on which text you're reading, her name tells you whether the reset was actually clean, or if maybe the seeds of the old wicked world were carried right onto the ark.
Absolutely. And that's where the theological stakes just couldn't be higher. Because when you look at the actual names proposed, you find 3 major candidates that don't just differ. They actively contradict one another.
Okay, so let's start with the one that creates the most drama, the name that comes up most often in some of this apocryphal literature.
That would be Naamah.
Naamah.
The Naamah connection. It introduces instant critical tension into the entire story. To get why, you have to look back at Genesis chapter 4. Naamah is identified as the daughter of Lamech and Zillah.
And her brother was Tubal-Cain.
Yes, and that's the key. What lineage do they belong to?
They are from the line of Cain.
The culmination of the line of Cain. Remember, the world before the flood is basically split in 2. You have the righteous line of Seth, where Noah comes from.
And the wicked, violent line of Cain.
Right. Naamah's father, Lamech, is famous for his bloodthirst. He brags about being 7 times more vengeful than Cain himself. Her brother, Tubal-Cain, invented metalworking, weapons. That whole line is associated with everything that supposedly made God want to start over in the first place.
Hang on a second. So the entire point of the flood was to wipe the slate clean, to get rid of the wicked line of Cain and save the righteous line of Seth.
That's the traditional reading, yes.
But if Noah's wife is Naamah, then the reset wasn't a clean slate at all. The woman who bore all post-flood humanity was genetically linked to the very wickedness that was supposed to be gone.
That is the staggering implication. It's like hitting factory reset on your computer of making sure to save the virus files right before you reboot.
Wow. It suggests the taint of the old world. The creativity, sure, but also the violence of the Cainite line was preserved. It was brought on board.
It's a profound theological choice by the writers who went with that tradition.
It feels like a commentary on human nature.
It could be that you can't just destroy everything bad because good and evil, civilization and violence, they're all tangled up together.
Okay, so I can see why other traditions would completely freak out about that idea.
Oh, for sure.
You can't have the new world starting with a Cainite relic.
Yeah.
You need a correction.
Precisely. And we see that correction very clearly stated in the deuterocanonical book of Tobit.
A text that was widely known in ancient Jewish and Christian circles.
Yes, and Tobit 4.15 gives us a direct counterpoint.
Yeah.
Just to state that Noah's wife was one of his own kindred.
So she had to be from the Sethite line, the righteous family.
Exactly.
That removes the theological stain, ensures a clean break.
Okay, problem solved, right? We have two options. The Cainite Naamah or the righteous unnamed relative.
Not solved, just made more complex. Because then we have to introduce a third identity from a completely different body of ancient Jewish literature.
The Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls.
Another entire textual world discovered so much later with another angle on this whole mystery. What name did they give her?
In those texts, we find the name Emzara.
Emzara.
Emzara. She's distinct. She doesn't carry the heavyweight baggage of the Cainite line, but she's not just a relative either. She's a specific, named individual standing outside that primary theological fight between Cain and Seth.
So we start with one nameless woman, which leads to this massive effort to name her. And the three most prominent names we get, Naamah, the unnamed kin, and Emzara, all completely contradict each other.
In lineage, in implication, in everything.
It's less like history being uncovered and more like tradition, just creating characters to suit an argument.
But that's what makes the deep dive so fascinating. These contradictions show the internal arguments happening. And this quest to name her didn't stop with the Judeo-Christian texts either.
Right. To really get the full scope, we have to look outside those traditions entirely.
We do.
We need to shift focus to a completely distinct religion that developed in the Near East. Let's talk about Mandaeism.
Mandaeism is a unique Gnostic religion. It's still practiced today, and they have their own huge collection of sacred literature, including their own flood story.
And, like everyone else, they face the same problem of the missing identity.
They did.
So where do we find her name in their core texts?
We find it in the Book of Kings, which is the final section of the Mandaean Rite Ginza, their main holy book. In that text, Noah's wife is generally called Nuraita.
Nuraita, so that's a fourth major candidate, completely separate from the Naamah and Emzara conflict, but I'm sensing a theme here. Does this tradition also have some ambiguity?
We absolutely do. Even in a distinct tradition, it's not immune to this kind of textual confusion. While Nuraita is the name most often associated with Noah's wife, some Mandaean sources contradict this. They suggest Nuraita might actually be the wife of Noah's son, Shem, not Noah himself. The identities start to merge and blur all over again.
What's fascinating here is how traditions try to resolve these overlaps when key characters are so closely related. Did they just ignore the ambiguity?
No, they actively stitched them together. And you can actually see a linguistic footprint of that process.
Oh.
In the name Nuraita, which is an alternate spelling you find in their texts, scholars think Nuraita is a perfect example of a portmanteau.
And for anyone listening, a portmanteau is when you blend two words to create a new one, like smoke and fog becomes smog.
Exactly. Nuraita seems to be a linguistic blend, a merger of two different women, Nuraita, the possible wife of Noah, and Anhar, who is explicitly identified in Mandaean texts as the wife of Shem.
That's brilliant textual maneuvering. So instead of choosing between the wife of the father or the wife of the son, the tradition literally creates a composite figure, Nuraita, who covers both roles.
It solves the narrative problem by just unifying the characters. It shows the adaptive genius of these traditions. When foundational figures have a gap in their identity, communities will actively edit, merge, or just redefine them to make sure the story stays coherent and serves their worldview.
It doesn't matter if we're looking at the Hebrew Bible, the Apocrypha, the Dead Sea Scrolls, or Mandaeism. This one nameless woman is adapted to suit every possible need. It's just incredible how much weight a single nameless character can carry and how that silence transforms into an entire library of conflicting information.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean for us today after taking this deep dive?
It means that the woman who was central to the survival of all humanity one of the 4 essential wives on that arc,
Yeah.
is simultaneously a complete blank in the foundational text and a figure with over 100 distinct names and personalities across history.
She really embodies this truth about how myths are made, the gaps, the silences in the original stories. They become these battlegrounds for interpretation.
Exactly. Her identity reflects this profound disagreement across traditions. She becomes a dynamic placeholder for whatever that tradition needed her to be.
A righteous relative, a necessary Cainite inclusion, a unified Mandaean mother figure.
All of the above. She is the woman who saw the world end and then begin again, and her essentialness is never in question. But the original source left her identity totally open.
Which raises an important question you should carry forward.
In these foundational myths, if identity is power, is the ultimate power sometimes found not in the detailed name or the lineage, but in the essential parts that are left unsaid?
Because her namelessness allows her to hold all 103 names.
It allows every possibility to survive the flood.